Long before electric refrigerators, ice boxes, or modern canning, humans relied on ingenious natural methods to keep food from spoiling. One of the most fascinating and honestly, surprisingly effective methods involved a little-known fungus that ancient cultures used to preserve meat, dairy, and vegetables. This was not just a passing trick. It was a carefully observed, repeatable process that allowed families, armies, and traders to store perishable foods for months, even in warm climates. Understanding how this worked offers lessons not just in history, but in practical survival and sustainable living today. Why ancient people turned to fungus to preserve food. Before refrigeration, spoilage was one of the greatest threats to survival. People noticed that certain foods stored in damp, mold-friendly environments would sometimes last far longer than expected. This was no coincidence. Specific fungi produce natural antimicrobial compounds that inhibit the growth of bacteria. Over generations, people learned to cultivate and control these fungi, creating a preservation system that required no salt, smoke, or cooling. For modern enthusiasts, this principle can be applied using controlled fermentation and natural molds, offering a low-energy alternative to refrigeration. How the fungus created a protective layer on food. The ancestral fungus worked by forming a thin, dense layer over the surface of food. This layer acted as a barrier, keeping out harmful microbes while allowing the food inside to slowly mature. For example, in early European and Asian dairy practices, cheese wheels were intentionally inoculated with specific molds to preserve the curds and develop complex flavors. The same principle applied to meat and vegetables. Once coated, the fungus slowed decomposition, extended shelf life, and even enhanced taste. Practically, replicating this today involves maintaining clean conditions, introducing the right fungal cultures, and monitoring moisture levels carefully. Why fermentation and fungal preservation were linked. Fungal preservation often worked hand in hand with fermentation. The fungi controlled harmful bacteria while allowing beneficial microbes to thrive, producing acids, alcohols, and other natural preservatives. This combination stabilized food and made it both safe and flavorful. For modern survivalists, understanding this link means that proper fermentation techniques, whether for sauerkraut, miso, or aged cheeses, can dramatically extend food longevity without electricity, all while enhancing nutritional value. So, let's talk about how ancient people actually used these methods for everyday survival. Records from a bunch of different cultures show that preserving food with fungus wasn't just for luxury items. It was, honestly, a necessity for armies, traders, and regular households. Meat, for example, would be coated with these fungal layers and then stored in cool, shaded areas. Vegetables might be buried in slightly damp, aerated soils that were inoculated with beneficial molds. And dairy products? Well, they were often wrapped in cloth or tucked into wooden containers that encouraged the growth of just the right fungal species. If you're curious about using these methods today, you can totally replicate them by creating controlled fermentation chambers, using breathable containers, and, selecting the appropriate cultures to naturally protect your foods. Now, let's get into why controlling moisture and temperature was, and still is, absolutely critical. Fungi, you see, really thrive only in specific conditions. If there's too much moisture, unwanted molds or bacteria could take over. If there's too little, the preservation process just wouldn't work. Ancient preservers got pretty clever with this. They mastered microclimates by storing food in cellars, underground pits, or insulated rooms where temperature and humidity were just right. The takeaway for us today is actually pretty simple. By controlling storage conditions, using cool, shaded, and slightly humid environments, you can dramatically improve shelf life when working with natural preservatives. Even small tweaks like using clay pots, wooden boxes, or damp cloth wrappings can help you emulate those age-old techniques. Let's talk about how, modern science actually validates these ancestral methods. Recent microbiological research, interestingly enough, confirms what our ancestors discovered through experience. Certain fungi produce compounds that actively inhibit pathogens like Salmonella, E. coli, and Listeria. This is exactly why foods that are aged or coated with the right fungi can stay safe for consumption much longer than those left unprotected. For enthusiasts and survivalists, this really opens up some exciting opportunities to use natural molds safely in food preservation, reducing our reliance on refrigeration and chemical preservatives. Now, how can we practically apply this ancestral fungal method today? Well, modern adaptations can actually be surprisingly simple. You can start with small batches, maybe a piece of cheese, a cured sausage, or even some fermented vegetables. Just use known beneficial cultures, keep the humidity at the right level, and monitor your temperatures closely. Allow the fungus to form a protective layer, and, honestly, you'll notice your food lasts significantly longer. For survivalists or folks living off-grid, this technique really reduces dependence on electricity while still providing nutritious and flavorful foods all year round. And by the way, historical recipes and fermentation guides can offer step-by-step guidance, making this technique accessible even if you're just starting out. So, why does studying these ancient preservation methods actually benefit us today? Well, the ancestral fungal method isn't just an interesting historical footnote, it's a real demonstration of observation, experimentation, and resourcefulness. It reminds us that survival, sustainability, and efficiency often come from working with natural processes, not fighting against them. For historians, food enthusiasts, and survivalists alike, mastering these techniques offers both practical value and a direct connection to the wisdom of our ancestors. If you want to dive deeper into forgotten survival strategies and practical historical knowledge, just subscribe to Thermal Vault, share this video with fellow history enthusiasts, and start exploring the timeless techniques that allowed people to preserve food safely for generations long before electricity ever existed.